Okay, so let's see. Here's my pattern. Basically, you can see it's two pieces. They're the same. The exception of one of them is longer than the other. So all I've done is overlapped, I think they call it the right sides of the fabric together, put them together, and then cut each pattern, one big, one little. Okay, next thing I did was I ironed over this little seam allowance, folded it over on the short piece, make this a little bit wider, so maybe 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch. On the longer piece, make it a smaller one. In my case, I'm trying to make it around 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so the first thing I have to say is I am not a seamstress, and I didn't know how to use this sewing machine until I started this project, so I'm probably sewing things incorrectly or in the wrong order. But for me, the first thing I do is I sew the big curved ends together. I just found that kind of holds the whole thing into place as I work through the rest of it. I'm leaving about 1/4 inch-ish seam allowance. It seems to be what the internet says to do. So I'm trying to do that. Now I go back and sew the little folded pieces that I made down. Sewing both pieces together around the ends, and then my little folded over end pieces. And now I'm going to put them together right side to right side. So I start at the top and line those points up. Get a needle in it, or a pin, I guess is what you call it in sewing. And work my way all the way down. And I'm going to measure. This is the trick that I've learned. I'm going to measure 2 inches down from the nose piece and put a pin there. I'm going to get it lined up and mark 2 inches. I'll do that on both sides, and then when I sew the two together, I create a pocket from my little bendy wire that holds the nose into place. Okay, I'm ready to sew it all the way across, but you can see I put a pin 2 inches from the nose down and 2 inches from the nose down on this side. When I stitch across, I'm going to come to that pin, and then I'm going to drop down. That'll be with a normal seam allowance. And I'm going to drop down and go across the bridge of the nose about 1 inch from the top. And that will give me the place to create a pocket for my little bendy wire nose piece. Okay, so hopefully you can see it. I'm going to start sewing these two together at the bridge of the nose with a normal seam allowance, about 1/4 inch or whatever. And then when I get to my 2 inch pin, I'm going to drop down and come across the bridge of the nose about 1 inch from the top. Ooh, sorry, get to the camera. And take it all the way across, and then come over and to my other 2 inch pin. Go back to a standard seam allowance to finish this side out. Okay, I'm not sure if you're able to see this or not, but basically I'm going back, starting my stitch where I kind of veered off of my normal seam allowance at that 2 inch mark. And I'm going to make I'm actually going to start literally on that seam line, and then do a normal seam allowance all the way up across the bridge, and then back down and stop just before I get to the other seam line on the opposite side, and then that'll leave a pocket, and we'll put a piece of wire in there in just a minute. I don't think think technically that's a normal seam allowance. It's as normal as not quite back to my stitch line, so I'm going to stop it right there. Okay, hopefully this is good enough you can see, but what I did is I sealed my 2 stitches together on this end. I left myself a gap on this end. And what I have are some little 3-inch pieces of wire I made. This happens to be floral wire. And for me, I bent it over at the ends and then I just put a piece of electrical tape across there. I'm going to slide that into the pocket that I've made. Slide it all the way over to the other side. That leaves me enough room, and then I'm going to come back and stitch that seam closed, and that'll enable me to keep that piece of wire. Okay, now you can see I've closed off both ends, so it's ready. I just kind of center the wire up in between the two, give it a little bend in the middle, and then when we turn this thing inside out, that'll be the nose piece. I've also pinned the bottom. So I've got the 2 seams, or the 2 edges of the fabric lined up across the bottom. I'm going to stitch across here and close that off. Okay, I'm almost there. So I got my nose piece sealed off, caught that wire, I've closed the end. Now all we're going to do is just rotate this thing inside out and finish the straps on the end. I'm almost there. Okay, I turned it inside out. I pressed it so that these seams are nice and tight, and then continued to press and just folded over the little gap pieces of fabric that you have here, and then went back and stitched them down. So now all I've got to do is fold this over. I'll iron it down before I stitch it down, and that'll create a pocket for my elastic. Alright, my last set of stitches. So basically I folded that fabric over that I showed you, made a pocket there. I'm going to stitch that pocket down. Inside. Same thing on the other side. And that's it. Okay, you can see those are finished. I got a pocket that I can slide my elastic through on both sides. Completed mask, not too hard. Okay, so here are a couple finished masks. There's a couple different ways you can put the elastic on. This one is made with an over-the-ear strap, so you can see there are 2 of them. I don't use this much. I made it for somebody else. And the best I can tell, it's about a 7 to 7.5 inch piece of elastic that you loop through there, and that should make it about the right size. The way I prefer them is this, and so most of these are, this is what I make most of the time, and this is an over the head type of elastic. So it's a 21 inch piece of elastic, wraps all the way around, so this bottom part goes around your neck, the top part goes over your head. It's definitely more secure, for me at least, than the over-the-ear kind. But whichever way you prefer, or however much elastic you have. This one's a little harder to get on, this one's easier to get on. And then the last thing I didn't point out is, you know, you've created this pocket in here. So, you know, that gives you 2 layers, obviously, of cotton fabric. Okay, then the final piece is I've cut these filters. You can see I kind of shaped them to the mask. It's made out of a piece of air filter. You just basically disassemble it, flatten it out, and then cut it to the mask shape. It slides in that pocket between the cotton. It is the kind of air filter that filters out virus and bacteria, so the higher end air filters. So that's the project.